Hello and welcome to Moments in History. I'm Linda Shenton Matchett, author, speaker, and history geek. While researching my stories, I unearthed tons of intriguing information that doesn't end up in my books. So I've created this channel so I can share that information with you. I appreciate you stopping by to watch. Long before he was governor of New York or vice president of the United States, Nelson A. Rockefeller, grandson of Standard Oil founder John D. Rockefeller, had his fingers in many businesses and municipal interests. After college, he worked in several family-related businesses, including Chase National Bank and Creole Petroleum Corporation. He also served as member of the Board of Health for Westchester, New York County. But it was his association with Creole that led to a lifelong interest in Latin America, and he eventually became fluent in the Spanish language. After expressing his concern to President Franklin Roosevelt about Nazi influence in Latin America, he was appointed coordinator of Inter-American Affairs in July of 1941. From his first campaign in 1932, Roosevelt sought to improve relations with the nations of Central and South America, emphasizing cooperation and trade rather than military force to maintain stability in the hemisphere. He hoped that Rockefeller's expertise and connections would boost political and economic relations between the U.S. and Latin American nations. The majority of the public relations campaign worked to improve relations and counter an imperialistic image of the U.S. that prevailed in the South. After the war began, OCIAA quickly shifted its priorities toward working to assure hemispheric solidarity and preventing South American nations from any undue alliances with the Axis, and specifically to counter Italian and German propaganda in the region. The organization had several branches, one of which handled motion picture production and distribution, using films to, quote-unquote, show the truth about the American way to these southern nations and to foster feelings of allegiance between the North and South. Hollywood studios, as well as Disney, partnered with the U.S. government on a nonprofit basis, making films and incorporating Latin American stars and content into their commercial releases. Colorful travelogues in Central America, such as Ralph Gray's Hill Towns of Guatemala and Sundays in the Valley of Mexico, are simply produced short films appearing almost to be amateur travel films, with voiceover narration commenting admiringly on the ancient customs and dress of the villagers around Lake Atitlan, Guatemala, and the bullfights of Mexico City. Another method was to use radio, and Rockefeller partnered with CBS Radio Broadcasting Network to establish the CBS Pan American Orchestra to showcase prominent musical artists from both North and South America on its Viva America program. Broadcasts to Latin America were coordinated by the OCIAA with CBS La Cadena de la America, Network of the Americas, shortwave radio, and radio telephone systems as envisioned by William S. Pally. Artists working in a variety of disciplines were appointed goodwill ambassadors to Latin America by the organization, which also sponsored a variety of cultural tours. A select listing includes Bing Crosby, Walt Disney, Aaron Copland, George Balanchine and the American Ballet, Orson Welles, and Rita Hayworth. The office was also concerned with public opinion in Latin America. It translated and disseminated relevant speeches by President Roosevelt and distributed pro-U.S. materials to featured syndicates in the region. It carried out audience research surveys and encouraged radio broadcasters targeting those regions to improve the quality of their programming. Walt Disney and a group of animators had been sent to South America in 1941 by the State Department as part of its Good Neighbor policy, and guaranteed financing for the resulting movie Saludos Amigos. It was put out in 1942. One scholar referenced, quote-unquote, an immense bibliography that points to the fact that the Nazi threat in Latin America was a myth, partly created by the U.S., and that information about Nazi Germany may be incorrect. end quote. Saying the war gave the U.S. the perfect opportunity to occupy broader roles and spaces in Latin America, important because of its raw materials, as a market for German products, and a destination for German immigration. As such, Rockefeller's task was to convince Latin Americans to believe my best interests are linked with the U.S., and I believe that my best interest will be harmed by the Axis. I believe the U.S. is going to win this war, and although it will be a difficult struggle, therefore, I am supporting the U.S. and stand ready to cooperate with the Americans and to make additional personal sacrifices along with the American people so I can help the U.S. win the war and establish a better world. A more heavy-handed method used by CIAA was to train the secret police of friendly nations and displace German sales to military forces by American aid. Pro-German newspapers and radio stations were blacklisted, government censorship was encouraged, while the Latin American countries were blanketed with pro-American propaganda. CIAA encouraged a voluntary program of non-cooperation with companies and individuals perceived to be anti-American. To this end, it cooperated secretly with British security coordination in New York. Though isolated in Europe, Britain maintained an extensive intelligence network in Latin America and was happy to undermine Germany's trade efforts overseas by identifying sympathizers and agents. Through these efforts, U.S. exporters were encouraged to drop over 1,000 accounts in South America during the first half of 1941 alone. Interestingly, one site indicates that the Office of the Coordinator of Inter-American Affairs was penetrated by American citizens who performed Soviet intelligence during World War II with the code name Cabaret. On August 31, 1945, by executive order, the informational activities of the office were transferred to the State Department. 8 months later, another executive order abolished the organization, and its remaining functions and responsibilities were transferred to the State Department. Scholars continue to debate the effectiveness of the OCIAA today. I hope you've enjoyed today's moment in history. If you'd like to learn even more history, please stop by my blog, which is found on my website at www.lindashentonmatchett.com. Please consider subscribing to my channel and click the bell icon to receive notification of new episodes, which generally release on the second and fourth Friday of each month. Thank you for stopping by to watch. Enjoy the rest of your week.